So we're looking at boys get it younger, and this is part of the human development stuff. My wife has written 40 books. She's an expert in child behavior, teaching, and reading. And so she's been doing a lot of stuff on how there's differential reading adoption. Girls get their long form reading first because girls only get their puberty once. Between 8 and 10, by the time they're in grades 6, 7, 8, they look like young women, put lipstick on them, they're scary. they got some growing up to do, but they've got their puberty once and they can calm down, they can read long form reading. They can go through a book, they can sit at the desk for 2 hours with their hands folded. Which, it's a broad generalization, there are some girls who are more active, my daughter being one. But boys get puberty 3 to 4 times. So boys get 40% of their hormone wash when they're between 8 and 10, and a bunch of stuff happens inside. But look at the boys in grade 6, 7, and 8, and look at the girls in grade 6, 7, and 8. So it's different, right? Then they get a 40% top, another dose when they're 12, 13. Height, hair, the shoulders kick in. When they're 17, they get another top up, and then some young men get it at 21. I grew an extra inch in height when I was 21 because I got another top up. And so boys have this massive puberty curve, while girls have a peak, and it's easier to control a girl at 8 and 10. You look at you controlling a boy at 15, 16, 17, and they start getting their height, and they're having a hormone wash that's making them freaking insane. And then you tell a boy, sit still and read in class. So my wife is only teaching boys right now, and she does the grade 4s because that's when they're getting their first nutso happening. And so you're sitting there saying, what's happening with this reading challenge as they're having trouble reading? Well, you got to make them move. Because male hormone cools, female hormone doesn't. So as male hormone increases, you get fidgety. And then you start feeling. So anybody who sat in a class, a double gender class, knows that the boys were stuttering when they were told to read aloud, which is one of the markers we do in grade 4, 5, and 6. If you actually make them stand for a minute or two, or get them moving, they can read without stuttering. The girls can't anyway. It helps their confidence, because they say, I want to read better than the boys. And that lasts for their whole life. And so, here we are, looking at the differential adoption of reading. Like the dominant video gamers are college women and young mothers, up until about 35. Girls become the major market for video games, and they develop their episodic reading skills in their late teens and early 20s. Boys broadly develop their episodic reading skills very young, and their long-form reading skills later. By the time we're 25, we're all sort of the same. You can get along. But there's non-politically correct ways that we adapt reading. And that makes a challenge for us on how we lay down this next generation style for dealing with visual stuff. Boys are reading more now because there's if you don't play video games, you might not be aware of how much reading is in that stuff. And then when you look at active-based reading, where you are moving your hands on a keyboard and reading the web and email and stuff and on your phone, that activity helps active-based learners and experience-based learners to adapt to stuff. A lot of us in librarianship are autonomic learners, that we write when we're listening, because writing the words forces our memory, and we know that's one of our learning styles. Some of us don't because we hear better auditory learning. Every one of my databases has read speak on it, so you can have the article read to you while you're reading it on the screen. Because we know that helps K-12 learners, because there's so many people who need that extra lift up. So when we look at maybe our style of being good readers and smart people and critical thinkers, because we're librarians and we're awesome, not lining up with all the talents of the general population that we need to sort to move forward with some of this stuff. So again, I find these pictures of artists who are doing books and seeing how people think about stuff and how they work. But how do we observe our learners? How do you observe what they're doing? How do you observe how they're handling things? So when I'm watching, I use my own kids a lot, then I go out and test it with 1,000 or something, because it's fun to wear trench coats and hide behind mirrors and libraries and watch people. I'm a weird guy in the back. When you're carrying in your two-way mirror in the library, and of course they notice there must be somebody behind the mirror. Anyway, walking around and looking over people's shoulders and seeing what they're doing. But when you're watching what they're doing, you start to get insight, right? So you say, okay, My daughter scares the hell out of me because she's not a text-based learner. And she comes home one day and says, well, I got everybody moved. What do you mean? Well, I got everybody in my high school to switch off MySpace onto Facebook, right? So you saw that MySpace and Facebook basically merged today, right? So there's some interesting stuff on how they're going to start sharing all their new stuff. So I said, well, why did you do that? And of course she was like 15, 16. And I said, she said, oh, you can handle perverts better on Facebook. And I'm going, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear you have trouble with perverts. No, I'd like an answer. And so I said, well, my son was already in Facebook. And she said, well, Zachary told me that Facebook was better. So I decided to switch the whole school. I said, well, how'd you do that? She said, when girls go to Washington pairs? I said, yeah. And she said, well, I told everybody. And I said, oh, is that what you talk about? And I said, well, how do the boys go? And she goes, for God's sake, Dad, the boys go with the girls are. But then I started to realize, both my kids had everyone they knew in high school. My daughter started teaching at the University of Toronto when she was 14, so she's really smart about a couple of things. And my son's scarier smarter. And so she had her classes at U of T on her Facebook. That's another reason why she changed. And then my son had his friends there. And he went on to the U of T to take his first degree. And he started adding people from his work, from his clubs, and from his sports teams, and from his university classes. And Sydney went on to York University to start a Bachelor of Fine Arts, doing the same thing. Zachary moved to Montreal to do his master's in English, and added in his Montreal people. And then he's gone to Ottawa to do his PhD, and he's adding in all the new PhD people there who are now following me on my Twitter account, which is scary. And Sydney has all of her fashion shows and her art and design stuff all connected to her. So I said, okay, my generation got the internet, and we started looking for our high school buddies by searching on their names, because we had to reassemble our little black books of our friends. What does it mean when you're socially connected to everyone you've ever known? Because you kept track of them for your life. And my son has a question about something about Australian authors. He has a friend who moved away in grade 11, where they still talk to each other on Facebook because they like each other, and he can ask that friend, and he can go into the Australian databases and do stuff for them. What does it mean when you're socially connected and you have that massive friend group? What's the number one place people go for information? And if anyone says Google, we're going to slap you. You should know, the number one place you'll go for information is friends and colleagues. What do we call it? Friending. If a librarian is not a friend or a colleague on Facebook or on the intranet, or making it clear that they have talents and skills beyond that, how quickly are we marching towards irrelevance? And if we can manage our presence, manage our safety, know how to do that, because we should be able to teach everybody from a very young age. Club Penguin was invented in Canada for the young kids and taught by Disney, makes you scary. But you've got this Facebook thing that's going on how to do that. Now, what is writing on your wall doing? My undergrad's in ethnography, primatology, and watching baboons pick bits off each other. Stuff you put on your wall is mutual grooming behavior that keeps a buzz going, that allows you to keep a friendship alive on stuff that goes beyond a Christmas card every Christmas. So when we watch our users and say, what does it mean when they're sitting there and the largest sharing system in the world is Facebook, 500 million people in it, how do we deal with that stuff? And then when we see the explosion into a chapter level universe in the non-fiction book work, exploding into databases, records, semantic style extractions of sentences and paragraphs to assemble something a different way. The University of Arizona, we have a system for the last 3 years that will write an essay off a search. You extract 50 articles, and that's what you want. You'll go through it and write the essay. Interesting. Yeah, it's scary. Except if you're the guy trying to write a report for very quickly understanding something, if you're a LACRA, and you have massive databases on all the financial information on all the companies in the world, and articles about those companies, and biographies of their executives and all that shit, and you're going out in the next day, wouldn't it be great if you could press one button using a LACRA and create a PDF that's 150 pages long, that's a complete summary of everything that's happened in that company up to date through the last 10 minutes? which is what it does when it rewrites the content so it's accessible and readable. And knitting charts and graphs and all that sort of stuff. I love books. I think books are awesome. I think certain kinds of books are not going to survive as books. Certain kinds of books are huge compromises. Textbooks are containers for pedagogy. What should pedagogy look like? Reference books are databases. Like I will admit that I've read encyclopedias from cover to cover. Only the A volume, because I come from a very poor family, and the A volume we got for free at the grocery store, and you had to buy B to Z. So we only had the A volume for 8 different sets of encyclopedias. My brother was lazy, all his essays were in aardvark. I managed to make it all the way up to Anteater. But that was our reference book at our house.